Hi y'all, my name is Serena. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a transgender lesbian and a communist with the Road Socialist Organization, and we are here making this video today along with the Hospitality Workers Alliance and the Real Name Campaign in honor and celebration of International Working Women's Day. So just to tell you all a little bit about Freedom Road Socialist Organization, or FRSO, you can see my little pin right here. We are a organization moving towards revolution. We are fighting against patriarchy, against homophobia, transphobia, racism, white supremacy, and capitalism. And to do this, we believe that it's important and it's necessary to overthrow the monopoly capitalist ruling class and its government. We're in cities throughout the country and towns throughout the country fighting against police crimes, for workers' rights, for students' rights, and locally in New Orleans, we pride ourselves in our TGNC leadership, so trans and gender nonconforming leadership, and our strong involvement in gender liberation struggles. Whenever capitalism needs extra workers, or when it needs to expand its markets, or when it needs people to do dirty work for it, it knows that it can call on women and other gender-oppressed people. Like right now in COVID, we see that women and other gender-oppressed people are on the front lines. To, as nurses, as essential workers, as people in the service industry fighting this disease. Now, we take a revolutionary attitude and an attitude that uplifts the masses of the people in the fight against patriarchy. And the reason for this is our liberation will never lie in capitalism or in imperialism, in the powers that be, because patriarchy is and has for all of capitalism's history, cis heteropatriarchy has been a way of maintaining the capitalist system. So just to provide a little bit of history about International Working Women's Day. So this is a day that's always been about oppressed and exploited women and about celebrating and honoring their struggles. And so it was established the year after the 1909 garment workers strike. So this was women workers laboring 16 hours a day in life-threatening conditions for poverty wages, going on strike, proving their leadership in the working class movement. And a year later, Clara Zetkin, a revolutionary and a communist of Germany, established the International Working Women's Day to celebrate their achievements and to recognize the importance of building revolution to defeat patriarchy. So let's not talk about participating in the system today. Let's talk about tearing it down and liberating ourselves from it. And so for that, we've got two wonderful organizations that are fighting on the ground in the people's struggles, in the mass movements. We've got the Real Name Campaign and the Hospitality Workers Alliance, and each of them have been asked, what would a liberated world that you're building look like?
Hi y'all, my name is Meg Maloney. I am a cook and organizer with the New Orleans Hospitality Workers Alliance. We are an organization created by and for hospitality workers. We are cooks, servers, dishwashers, bartenders, hotel clerks, musicians, and more. Our purpose is to organize ourselves as workers so we can secure just conditions in our industry, wages we can live on, benefits to support our families, and freedom from harassment and discrimination in the workplace. Recently, our work has looked like holding down the picket line with still perkin' baristas who went out on strike demanding COVID safety, standing with workers at N7 restaurant who went on strike demanding the reinstatement of their coworker who was unjustly fired for advocating for workers' safety, and currently we're working to produce a Know Your Rights scene to distribute to our fellow workers. When I imagine a liberated world for hospitality workers, I see a world where we receive the full fruits of our labor. A world where our jobs, housing, healthcare, transportation, food, and education are guaranteed. A world where every worker has the right to a union, where greedy, racist, patriarchal bosses are taken out of power. A world where we have a say over the food we serve in the kitchens we run, where we aren't treated as disposable. A world where workers receive the paid sick leave and maternity leave that we need and deserve. Where if we get the flu or COVID-19, we're able to access medical care and stay home with pay without fear of retaliation or eviction. A world where instead of millions of our tax dollars being stolen from us and used for marketing and fattening the pockets of the rich, they would be used to provide reliable transportation for all residents. A world where workers don't have to work 10 to 12-hour shifts only to get off and wait an hour to 3 hours for a bus to get home. A world where our taxes are used to invest in the betterment of our communities instead of investing in cops, jails, and reactive measures. Currently, the French Quarter is filled with empty vacation homes and Airbnbs. In a liberated world, native Black New Orleanians would have first access to that housing. Instead of empty balconies, we'd see hospitality workers drinking coffee or having a morning smoke. We'd hear music flowing into the street that isn't a pre-manager approved playlist. All workers would receive the dignity and respect that we deserve. Our workplaces would be collectively ran, and the dishwasher's input would be just as valued as the chef's. A world where the workers are in control, where we do not produce for profit, but for the needs of our communities. A world where Black, Indigenous, migrant, LGBTQ, and women workers are determining our own conditions and destiny. We know this can only be manifested through the organization and fight back of working class and oppressed people. Onward to revolution, and onward to a liberated working class. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Ed Abraham. I use he, him pronouns, and I am one of the many individuals involved in the Real Name Campaign. The Real Name Campaign is made of activists in New Orleans fighting for accessible legal name and gender marker changes so that everyone's state and federal identification is accurate. Our most recent successes include cutting the fee for a legal name change in Orleans Parish in half. We're still demanding that all barriers to correct ID be abolished, including fees, disclosure of healthcare, and disclosure of criminal convictions. Access to accurate legal identification is essential to trans and gender nonconforming people having the freedom to live as themselves safely and with dignity. A huge facet of what that freedom looks like is equitable access to employment. The patriarchal, white supremacist culture we live in has long deemed that being visibly trans is simply unprofessional, that if we can't pass for what's considered socially gender acceptable and binary, we can be forced to present as a gender we're not, face violence or harassment from clients and coworkers, be terminated from our sole source of income, or lose opportunities for employment altogether. Until the workforce is fully safe and accessible to trans and gender nonconforming people, having proper ID can protect us and our employment. It can mean that we don't have to out ourselves to our employers. It can also provide legal protection against being forced to wear clothing or being referred to as names and pronouns that we aren't comfortable with. Being locked out of work deemed legal has led many trans people to rely on sex work to survive. Regardless of its legality, sex work is real work. It's hard work and it's important work. And sex workers deserve the workplace safety that will only happen if their trade is decriminalized. Instead, trans sex workers are being targeted by police in our justice system, especially Black and Indigenous trans women. Laws like Louisiana's Crimes Against Nature statute put trans people at risk of being brutalized by police and placed in jails just for trying to survive. Doing further harm, Louisiana does not allow many incarcerated people or people under probation to apply for corrections to their identifications. Some convictions can bar folks from correcting their ID for life, and that makes accessing a livable wage even more difficult, trapping trans people in dangerous poverty. There's still a lot of work to be done before trans and gender nonconforming people have equitable access to work and income, but a lot of progress has been made. This is solely thanks to not those in established seats of power, but to the brave organizing work of visibly queer activists and community leaders fighting for their rights. As the paid labor workforce becomes more accessible to trans people, we have to consider the needs of older trans people and our trans elders, who have experienced decades of being barred from opportunities for socioeconomic elevation because of who they are. Their survival is a miracle, and everything must be done to ensure that they see old age. The very least our federal representatives can do for them is make sure that the minimum wage is a living wage, and that trans healthcare, as well as access to all healthcare services, is free, regardless of a person's employment status. Again, all of the progress that young women and queer people benefit from now is the fruit of a long history of organizing, where poor and working class marginalized people gave labor for free to fight for themselves and their community. We celebrate all of the women and femmes who are and have been at the forefront of this work, as well as all the working women and femmes across essential industries who have been ensuring human survival during this pandemic.
Stay engaged, get involved, join up. Check out these organizations' websites. Check them out on Facebook, on Instagram, nohwa.org for the Hospitality Workers Alliance, Real Name Campaign NOLA. Just Google it, you'll find us, and FRSO.org/join.